The wind off Lake Como cut through my coat like it wasn't even there. February in northern Italy wasn't supposed to feel this cruel, but then again, nothing about my life had gone according to plan. I pressed my back against the service entrance of Villa Serafina, waiting for the shift manager to unlock the door. My fingers were numb around the strap of my canvas bag, the one that held my apron, a protein bar I couldn't afford to eat yet, and my phone with 17 missed calls from the hospice. Inside, the villa glowed like a jewelry box. Crystal chandeliers threw light across marble floors, and women in gowns that cost more than my yearly rent drifted past floor-to-ceiling windows. I was hired to serve champagne and disappear. The agency made that clear. Elite clients, generous tips if you're invisible, immediate termination if you're not. I tied my apron and lifted a tray. The bubbles in each flute caught the light as I moved through the crowd, a ghost in black and white. Conversations washed over me in Italian, French, English, languages of people who summered in 3 countries and wintered in 4 more. I understood more than they assumed. My grandmother had made sure of that. Then I saw him. He stood near the terrace doors, apart from the clusters of guests, a man who didn't need to announce himself. Tall, dark suit cut so precisely it seemed like a second skin, jaw sharp enough to split the light. He wasn't looking at the art on the walls or the women vying for his attention. He was looking at me. Not through me, at me. My pulse kicked. I adjusted my tray and turned toward the kitchen, but I felt his gaze track my movement like a compass finding north. The phone in my pocket vibrated, once, twice, 3 times. The hospice never called unless it was urgent. I set the tray down on a sideboard and slipped into the hallway near the coat check, my hands shaking as I answered. Pronto. The nurse's voice was low, careful. Signorina Taviani, your grandmother's condition has changed. You should come tonight if you can. My throat closed. How bad? She's asking for you, in Venetian. She won't speak anything else. I switched without thinking, my grandmother's dialect pouring out, the one she'd taught me in her tiny kitchen while she rolled pasta and told me stories about a world that didn't exist anymore. Dighici rivo, dighici no la milasa. Tell her I'm coming, tell her not to leave me. When I turned around, he was there. The man from the terrace, close enough that I could see the silver threading through the black of his hair at his temples, the faint scar along his jawline, the way his eyes, dark, unreadable, held mine without flinching. Who taught you that? His voice was quiet, but it landed like a hand on my wrist. I blinked. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. Venetian, he said, not a question. Old Venetian, the kind that died with the fishermen and the glassblowers. My heart hammered. My grandmother. He studied me for a beat too long, then stepped back just enough to let me breathe. Come with me. I'm working. Not anymore. He walked toward a door I'd never noticed, one that didn't lead to the kitchen or the main hall. I should have gone back to my tray. I should have ignored him. But the hospice nurse's words looped in my head, and my bank account had 38 euros, and the train to Venice didn't run this late. I followed. The room beyond the door was an office, all dark wood and leather, a desk that looked like it had been carved from a single tree. He closed the door behind us and gestured to a chair. I didn't sit. Your grandmother is in hospice, he said. How do you know that? You just told someone on the phone that you're coming and begged her not to leave. He moved to the desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a slim leather folder. Venice. I nodded mute. He wrote something on a card and held it out. This is a ticket, first class, departing at midnight. There's a car waiting at the service entrance. The driver knows where to take you. I stared at the card. Why would you do this? Because I need someone who speaks the way you do. He set an envelope beside the card. 5,000 euros, advance. The number hit me like cold water. For what? Translation, consultation, presence. He leaned against the desk, arms crossed. I have business that requires someone who understands the old language, the old ways. You'll travel with me, attend meetings, and ensure nothing is lost in translation. I'm a waitress. Not a very good one if you're taking phone calls mid-shift. His mouth curved barely. You're educated, you're careful, and you speak a dialect that 3 people in this country still use fluently. I'm offering you a job. And if I say no, then you go back to your tray and I'll find someone else. But your grandmother won't wait for your next paycheck. The envelope sat on the desk between us, thick and real. I thought of Nana in her narrow bed, her hands like birds' wings, her voice fatting into the dialect of her childhood. "What kind of business?" I asked. "The kind that pays well and asks for discretion." "That's not an answer. It's the only one you'll get tonight." He straightened, and I realized how much space he took up without trying. "The car leaves in 10 minutes, with or without you." I picked up the envelope, the card. His eyes gleamed. Brava. I walked out of that office and into a car that smelled like leather and expensive cologne, and I didn't look back at the villa or the tray of champagne or the life I'd been barely surviving. The city blurred past the window, and my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Driver will wait as long as you need. Specialist arriving at Hospice 0800. LM." LM. I didn't even know his name. But he'd already made calls, arranged specialists, bought me time I couldn't buy myself. The car pulled up to the train station, and the driver handed me a second envelope. Inside was a key card and an address in Venice. "For after," he said, "Signor Morty insists." Morty. I boarded the train and watched the lights of Como dissolve into the dark. The envelope of cash pressed against my ribs like a secret I hadn't decided to keep yet. When I arrived at the hospice, Nana was awake. Her eyes found mine, bright and fierce despite the tubes and monitors. "Dovzito sta," she whispered. "Where have you been?" I took her hand. "Sun qua Nana." She smiled, squeezed my fingers. "Bon tiga un anzelo, lo sento." "You have an angel, I feel it." I thought of the man in the dark suit, the way he'd looked at me like I was a puzzle he intended to solve. Angel wasn't the word I'd use. But as the specialist arrived exactly at 8, as the nurses moved with a new efficiency and respect, as Nana's room was upgraded to a private suite with a view of the canal, I started to understand the shape of the cage I'd just stepped into. Beautiful, comfortable, and locked from the outside. The specialist was Swiss, silver-haired, with hands that moved over Nana's charts like he was reading sheet music. He spoke to me in Italian, then paused. "Your Signorina Taviani." "Yes." "Signor Morty made it clear your grandmother is to receive the highest standard of care. Anything she needs." "Why?" The specialist's smile was professional, distant. "I don't ask questions, I follow instructions." He left me with a treatment plan that would have bankrupted me twice over and a private nurse who introduced herself as Alessia. Nana slept through most of it, her breathing easier, her face smoothed of pain. I sat by the window and watched the gondolas drift past, and I tried not to calculate the cost of what was happening. Tried not to feel the weight of the debt I was accumulating with every hour of specialized care, every dose of medicine that didn't come from the standard hospice supply. My phone buzzed. "Rest. Car will collect you at 1800 tomorrow. Bring what you need for 2 weeks. LM." 2 weeks. I typed back, "I haven't agreed to anything." The reply was instant. "You took the money. You used the ticket. You're sitting in the suite I arranged. You agreed the moment you stepped into my car." I stared at the screen, fury and fear tangling in my chest. Another message. "Your grandmother will be cared for regardless. But if you want to ensure she's comfortable, if you want to be there when it matters, you'll do this." I threw the phone onto the chair and pressed my hands to my face. Nana stirred. "Casa Z Toso, what is it, child?" Nothing, I lied. Her eyes opened, sharp despite the medication. No ti fidar de nissan chiti, datudo senza demandar nent. Don't trust anyone who gives you everything without asking for anything. But he was asking. He'd named his price. I just didn't know the currency yet. At 6 the next evening, I walked out of the hospice with a duffel bag and a heart full of unspoken conditions. The car was black, sleek, windows tinted dark enough to hide anything. The driver nodded and opened the door. Inside, Morty waited. He wore a different suit, charcoal gray, no tie. His collar was open just enough to show the hollow of his throat, and I hated that I noticed. "Buonasera," he said. I slid into the seat and kept my bag on my lap like a shield. "Where are we going?" "Milan, then Florence, possibly Rome." He handed me a tablet. "These are the files, meetings, personnel, history. You'll read them on the plane." "Plane? I don't take trains." He looked at me, and there was something almost amused in his expression. "You'll need different clothes. We'll stop first." "I have clothes." "Not for where we're going." The car pulled away from the curb and Venice melted into the rear view. I opened the tablet. The first file was labeled Morty Logistics and Holdings. Beneath it, shipping routes, warehouses, a network that stretched across Europe and into North Africa. Legal on the surface. But the names in the personnel list made my skin prickle. I recognized two from news reports about organized crime, another from a scandal involving customs fraud. I looked up. "What exactly do you ship?" "Whatever needs shipping." That's not an answer. You'll learn to live with that. The boutique was in a district I'd only ever walked past, where even the windows seemed to cost more than I made in a year. Morty didn't come inside. He sent an assistant, a woman named Claudia with a tablet and an eye that assessed me like I was a project. "Signor Morty has a vision," she said, leading me to a private room. "Trust the process." An hour later, I owned clothes I'd never have chosen. Tailored trousers, silk blouses, a coat that felt like wearing a cloud, and a dress. Black, simple, cut to skim rather than cling. Elegant. Expensive. Claudia held up a box. Inside, a strand of pearls. "He said you'd refuse these," she said, "but you'll need them." "Why?" "Because where you're going, appearance is armor." She fastened them around my neck. "And he wants you protected." I touched the pearls. They were warm, real. Claudia met my eyes in the mirror. "He doesn't do this for just anyone." "Do what?" "Care." The word landed wrong, too intimate for a transaction. But when I walked out of the boutique and Morty's gaze dragged from my shoes to my face, lingering on the pearls, I understood what she meant. "Better," he said quietly. The plane was small, private leather seats that reclined into beds. Morty sat across from me, working on a laptop, his focus absolute. I read the files, taking notes, trying to map the network in my head. Halfway through the flight, I looked up. "Why Venetian?" He didn't stop typing. "My father spoke it before he died." "I'm sorry." "Don't be, he wasn't a good man." His fingers paused. But he knew the value of the old words, the old rules. Some of my business partners are traditional. They trust what they recognize. And I'm supposed to be that recognition. You're supposed to be the bridge. He closed the laptop and looked at me. "They'll test you. They'll assume your decoration. Prove them wrong and you'll be invaluable. Fail and you'll be irrelevant. And if I want to leave, then leave. I don't keep people who don't want to be kept." But the pearls around my neck said otherwise. We landed in Milan as the sun set, the city all golden light and ancient stone. The hotel was near the Duomo, a building that had been standing since before anyone remembered why. Morty's suite was on the top floor, a sprawling space with views that made my chest ache. "Your room is next door," he said, handing me a key card. "We have dinner at 9, formal." I'd been dismissed. I went to my room, smaller but still absurdly luxurious, and sank onto the bed. The dress Claudia had packed hung in the closet, waiting. The pearls sat in their box on the dresser. I thought about Nana, about the specialist and the private nurse and the suite with the view. I thought about the 38 euros I'd had yesterday and the 5,000 I had now. I thought about the man across the hall, who gave orders like breathing and looked at me like I was something he'd already decided to own. And I put on the dress. Dinner was at a restaurant that didn't have a sign, just a heavy door and a host who recognized Morty instantly. We were led to a private room in the back, a table set for 4. The other 2 arrived 10 minutes later, an older man with a face like carved stone and a younger one, polished and sharp, who looked at me the way a jeweler looks at a gemstone. Morty made introductions in Italian, then switched to Venetian. La zico mi, la parla. She's with me, she speaks. The older man's eyebrows lifted. He addressed me directly, testing. De dove vien tosa. Where are you from, girl? I answered in the same dialect. Venezia, Borgogna San Marco. His smile was slow, approving. He switched to Italian. It's been 30 years since I heard that accent, your family. Glassblurs, long time ago. He nodded, satisfied. The younger man, his son, I guessed, leaned forward. And now you work for Morty. Now I translate. Translation is a kind of trust, the older man said. Delicate work. Morty's hand moved to the small of my back, light, possessive. She has my trust. The conversation shifted to business, shipping schedules and port access, terms I half understood and phrases I made note of. The older man spoke in a mix of Italian and Venetian, slipping into the dialect when he wanted privacy from the waitstaff, from the world. I caught every word, translated the nuances, and watched Morty's expression shift with each piece of information. After the dessert course, the older man stood. Your father would be proud. You've chosen well. Morty inclined his head, grazy. When we were alone, his hand stayed at my back. You did well. They're smugglers. They're logistics experts. That's not. It's exactly what it is. He guided me out of the restaurant into the car. You don't have to like them, you just have to translate. What happens when translation isn't enough? He looked at me and the city lights caught in his eyes, turning them almost gold. Then we adapt. Back at the hotel, he walked me to my door. I expected him to leave. Instead, he leaned against the frame, too close, his cologne wrapping around me like smoke. Thank you, I said, because I didn't know what else to say. For what? Nana, the specialist, everything. His expression softened just barely. She's important to you. She's all I have. Not anymore. He reached out, adjusted the pearls at my throat. His fingers grazed my collarbone. Sleep. Tomorrow is Florence. He left me standing in the doorway, my heart racing, the pearls warm against my skin. I locked the door and leaned against it, breathing hard. Not anymore. Like I'd been collected, acquired. I pulled out my phone and called the hospice. Alessia answered. Your grandmother is resting well. The pain management is effective. Can I speak to her? She's asleep, but I'll tell her you called. I hung up and sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing the dress, still wearing the pearls. Outside, Milan glittered. Inside, I tried to convince myself I'd made the right choice. Florence was different. The meeting wasn't in a restaurant but in a villa outside the city, a Renaissance estate with frescoes on the walls and gardens that looked like they'd been painted by God. Morty's contact here was a woman, mid-50s, elegant in the way that came from money so old it had forgotten where it started. She greeted us in the courtyard, her smile cool. Lorenzo, it's been too long. Lorenzo. So that was his first name. Signora Bellini, he said, taking her hand. This is Chiara Taviani, my associate. I offered my hand. She studied me with eyes that missed nothing. Venetian, she asked. Yes. Interesting. She led us inside to a study lined with books and maps. Your father had a Venetian on his staff once, a man named Taviani. My blood went cold. My grandfather. Her smile sharpened. The world is smaller than we think. The meeting was tense, negotiations over routes and percentages, Signora Bellini pushing for terms that would have bled Morty dry. I translated her subtext, the insults she buried in politeness, the threats she wrapped in compliments. He countered with precision, never raising his voice, never showing anger. When it was over, we walked back to the car in silence. "Did you know," I asked, "about your grandfather?" "Yes." I suspected. He opened the car door for me. Your grandmother's dialect, the way she spoke, it matched stories my father told. What kind of stories? The kind where debts are paid in blood or loyalty. He slid in beside me. Your grandfather worked for my father. He was good at what he did. Quiet, trustworthy. And then he retired, took his daughter to Venice, disappeared. Because he wanted out. Because my father let him out. Lorenzo's gaze was steady. I'm not my father, Chiara. Then what are you? Still deciding. That night he didn't walk me to my door. He poured 2 glasses of wine in his suite and gestured for me to sit. The view from his windows was Brunelleschi's dome, lit gold against the dark. Ask, he said. Ask what? Whatever you've been holding back. I took a breath. Why me, really? Because you're not afraid of me. You're afraid of the situation, of what it costs, but not of me. He swirled the wine. And because when you speak the old language, I hear my father's voice, the parts of him that were good. Were any parts of him good? Enough. He set the glass down. He built this empire. I'm trying to turn it into something that doesn't require bodies in its foundation. Is that possible? I don't know, but I'll need someone who believes it is. Why do you think I believe that? Because you're still here. We sat in silence, the city breathing below us. My grandmother is dying, I said quietly. I know. And when she's gone, I'll have nothing to go back to. Then don't go back. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Stay, help me build something different. In exchange for what? Your time, your skill, your honesty, he paused. And eventually if you choose more. More? The word hung between us, dangerous and warm. I stood, I should go. He didn't stop me, but as I reached the door he said, Chiara. I turned. You're not a transaction. Don't let anyone, including yourself, treat you like one. I went back to my room and lay awake until dawn, watching the sky turn from black to gray to gold. In the morning, Alessia called. Your grandmother is asking for you. She's clear today, very clear. I was on a train within the hour, Lorenzo's driver taking me to the station, a first-class ticket already purchased. He didn't come with me. He just sent a message, take what time you need. Nana was sitting up when I arrived, her eyes bright. Casa Gefado Tosa. What have you done, child? I told her, all of it. The job, the money, the clothes, the pearls, the man who looked at me like I was a problem he wanted to solve. She listened, her hand in mine. When I finished, she smiled. Conoscevo so per, un uomo pericoloso. I knew his father, a dangerous man. I know. E Lorenzo zi piso o meglio. And is Lorenzo worse or better? I don't know yet. She squeezed my hand. Allora scavri, ma noti desmenteger citi si nataviani, no simo possessioni. Then discover, but don't forget your Ottaviani, we are not possessions. Lo so, Nana. She closed her eyes, tired. Brow, dissova a costrier qualcosa ci importa. Good, now go build something that matters. I stayed until she slept, then kissed her forehead and left. The train back to Florence felt longer, heavier. When I walked into Lorenzo's suite, he was on the phone, speaking rapid Italian. He saw me and ended the call. How is she? Clear, strong for now. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. Good. I set my bag down. I'm staying. I know. But I have conditions. His mouth curved. Of course you do. I want autonomy. I'm not an accessory. I'm not arm candy. I do my job, I get paid fairly, and when this is over, when Nana is gone, I walk away with enough to start over. Somewhere far from here. Agreed. And you don't touch me unless I want you to. He stepped closer, close enough that I could see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes. That's not a condition. That's a baseline. Then we have a deal. He offered his hand. I took it. His grip was warm, firm, and when he pulled me closer, slowly, giving me every chance to step back, I didn't. What are you doing? I whispered. Renegotiating. His thumb traced my knuckles. I said you're not a transaction, I meant it, but if you stay, Chiara, it won't just be for the job. What else would it be for? Me, he let go of my hand, but his gaze held mine. And eventually, if I'm lucky, us. I left the room before I could do something reckless, like believe him. Rome was a whirlwind. Meetings in cafes and palazzos, conversations that danced between legal and less so, men in expensive suits who looked at Lorenzo with respect and fear in equal measure. I translated, took notes, and started to see the pattern. He was consolidating, buying out competitors, restructuring supply chains, shifting assets into legitimate ventures. It was a slow transformation, like turning a ship that had been sailing toward a cliff. But not everyone wanted the ship to turn. The gallery event was supposed to be simple: art, wine, culture. Lorenzo's attempt to signal his shift toward respectability. I wore the black dress again, the pearls, and stayed at his side as we moved through the crowd. Then I saw him. A man I didn't recognize, but whose presence made Lorenzo's jaw tighten. Younger than Lorenzo, handsome in a cold way, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Morty, the man said, switching to English. What a surprise. Dante, Lorenzo's voice was flat. I didn't know you were in town. I go where opportunity calls. Dante's gaze slid to me. And who is this? My associate. Associate, Dante's smile widened. How modern of you. I felt the danger in him, the way a rabbit feels the hawk. Lorenzo's hand moved to my back. Enjoy the art, Dante. We walked away, but I felt Dante's eyes on us. Who was that? I asked. A problem I thought I'd solved. What kind of problem? The kind that doesn't believe in clean exits. An hour later, uniformed officers entered the gallery. Not police, financial regulators. They moved toward Lorenzo with purpose. He saw them coming and turned to me calm. Walk to the north exit. There's a car waiting. Black sedan, license plate VE7749. Get in. Don't wait for me. What's happening? A message, go. I didn't argue. I moved through the crowd, trying not to run, and slipped out the north exit. The sedan was there, engine running. I got in. Lorenzo appeared 3 minutes later, his expression carved from stone. He gave the driver an address I didn't recognize, then pulled out his phone. It was Dante, I said. I know. What does he want? Me out or dead, possibly both. He made a call, spoke in clipped sentences, then hung up. We're leaving Rome tonight. Where are we going? Somewhere he can't follow. The car took us to a private airfield. A different plane, smaller, faster. As we lifted into the night, Lorenzo finally looked at me. I'm sorry, he said. For what? For making you a target. I knew the risks. Did you? His voice was rough. Or did I just make you think you did? I didn't answer. He leaned back, closed his eyes. You should leave after this, take the money, start over. Is that what you want? It's what's safe. That's not what I asked. He opened his eyes. No, it's not what I want. We landed in the Alps, a small airfield surrounded by mountains. A car took us up a winding road to a chalet that looked like something from a postcard. Stone and wood, windows glowing warm. Inside, it was all exposed beams and fireplaces, a refuge carved from the cold. "This is yours?" I asked. "My father's, now mine." He poured 2 drinks, handed me one. "We'll stay here until I can neutralize Dante." "How?" "Carefully." I took the drink, let the warmth spread through me. "You said you're not your father." "I'm not." "Then prove it. Don't just hide. Don't just survive. Build something better." He looked at me for a long moment. "You believe that's possible?" "I have to." He set his glass down and crossed to where I stood by the fire. "You're my weakness, Chiara." The words should have scared me. Instead, they settled like truth. "Then we're even," I said. He cupped my face, his thumb tracing my cheekbone. "If I kiss you, it changes everything." "Maybe everything needs to change." He kissed me slowly, carefully, like I was something precious that might break. I felt the restraint in him, the want he was holding back. When he pulled away, his forehead rested against mine. "I'll keep you safe," he whispered. "I don't need safety, I need choice." "Then choose." I chose the fire. I chose his hands in my hair and his breath against my neck. I chose the risk and the fear and the wild, impossible hope that something good could come from something broken. And when we finally pulled apart, breathless and trembling, I chose to stay. The next morning, Lorenzo was on the phone before dawn, coordinating, strategizing. I made coffee and listened, piecing together his plan. Dante had used the financial police as a weapon, but Lorenzo had files. Evidence of Dante's own crimes, carefully compiled over months. He wasn't going to fight fire with fire. He was going to fight fire with law. "It's a risk," he said, hanging up, "but it's clean." "Will it work?" "If I can get the right people to listen." "Then make them listen." He smiled, tired. "You sound like my father." "I sound like someone who wants to live." Over the next week, we stayed in the chalet while Lorenzo orchestrated from a distance. I spoke to Alessia daily. Nana was stable, comfortable, the morphine keeping her pain at bay. She asked about me, and I told her I was safe. I didn't tell her about the way Lorenzo looked at me over breakfast, or the way his hand found mine when we sat by the fire, or the way he kissed me goodnight like it was both a promise and an apology. On the 8th day, Lorenzo got the call he'd been waiting for. "Dante's been detained," he said. "Fraud, money laundering, conspiracy. The evidence was too clean to ignore." "It's over." The immediate threat, yes. He pulled me into his arms. "But this life, it doesn't end cleanly." "Then we make it end, together." He kissed the top of my head. "Together." We returned to Milan, to a city that felt different now. Lorenzo started restructuring in earnest, selling off the shadowy holdings, investing in legitimate ventures. It was slow, painful work. People resented the change, but he was relentless. And I was there, translating not just language but intention, helping him navigate the old world while building the new. 3 months later, Alessia called. "You should come." I knew what it meant. Lorenzo flew me to Venice himself. He waited in the hall while I sat with Nana, holding her hand. "Mitosa brava," she whispered, "my good girl." "Nana." "No, scolta, listen. Ti gaskelto ben, luzi perigoloso sai ma anche bon, come so per ma maggio." You've chosen well. He's dangerous, yes, but also good, like his father but better. "How did you know?" "Parchte non o mi ladito." Her smile was soft. "Your grandfather told me before he died. He said, if the boy survives, he'll be worth trusting." "He survived." "Et anca, and so did you." She closed her eyes. "Disovego ma ti resta costruisi." "Now I go, but you stay, build." She didn't wake up again. Lorenzo held me while I cried, there in the hospice room with the canal outside, and the morning light turning everything gold. "I'm sorry," he said. She was ready. "Are you?" I looked up at him, at this dangerous, careful man who'd given me a choice when I'd had none. For what? Whatever comes next. I buried my face in his chest. "Ask me tomorrow." Tomorrow came, and the day after, and the months after that. Lorenzo's restructuring worked. Slowly, painfully, but it worked. The empire became a legitimate business, shipping and logistics without the shadows. He testified behind closed doors, traded information for immunity, and walked the line between his past and his future. I stayed, not as an employee but as a partner. I went back to school, finished the degree I'd abandoned, and started consulting independently. But I always came back to him. 2 years later, we married on a terrace overlooking Lake Como, in the same city where he'd first heard me speak the language that had changed everything. The ceremony was small, a few friends, fewer family, no ghosts. "Ready?" he asked, as we stood at the edge of the terrace. I looked at the lake, at the mountains, at the life we'd built from the wreckage of the old one. "Together," I said. He kissed me, and for the first time in years, I felt warm all the way through. 5 years after that, I stood in that same villa, the one where I'd once served champagne and disappeared, and watched Lorenzo address a room full of investors, legal ones, respectable ones. He was building a foundation in Nana's name, funding hospice care and cultural preservation, turning money made in darkness into light. When he finished, he found me by the terrace doors. "What are you thinking?" he asked. I touched the pearls at my throat, the same ones he'd given me that first night. That I was freezing and invisible and anonymous, and now I'm here. "Do you regret it?" "Not even for a second." He pulled me close, his hand at the small of my back, protection, not possession. "Good, because I'm not done building yet." "Neither am I." Outside, the lake caught the light, and the wind wasn't cold anymore. It was just wind. And I was home,